So our branches provide local services to local members. And in terms of the society branches, we have 11, so 8 within England and 3 within the devolved nations. We also have 29 divisional branches and 29 faculty branches as well. So overall, we have a huge number of geographic splits within the organisation. The society branches do not relate to the divisional branches. For example, the Division of Clinical Psychology branches were reorganised to relate to Strategic Health Authority boundaries. Those no longer exist. We then have the faculty branches as well, which are different to the DCP branches. So we have different pockets of activity being carved in the country. What we're suggesting is that there are going to be 2 types of geographic networks: BPS branches and nations as well. So if I take those ideas a little bit further, the BPS branch, you become a member of a society branch as part of your membership, and this is supporting every psychologist, and it provides these opportunities here. So you have networking opportunities, there are public engagement events, student engagement, we provide professional development, communications including newsletters, social media, and the local awards, grant schemes and bursary schemes. And so what we're suggesting is that throughout the UK, and that includes the home nations, there will be these BPS branches. Additionally, in the devolved nations, there will be another structure which we're calling BPS Devolved Nations. And these will have a policy function which will be linked to the boards. In Nicola's presentation, she talked about the nation chairs being members of the Senate, and there will be representation on the boards as well. And it's an opportunity to influence policy at the level of devolved governments and with national policy structures as well. So we're splitting that distinct function out so it has its own structure in order to deliver those services. With the network branches, so that's the 58 which relate to the divisional branches and also to the faculty branches as well, we're suggesting that those and the society branches are merged into this new structure. And the funding and support of the work streams for the BPS branches and nations will come through those new structures. The branches, the current society branches, cover in practical areas at the moment, and as a response to that, what we are seeing is that our society branches are setting up hubs in order to resolve that geography. And so what we need to do is look at how we can best harness the energy and enthusiasm and support and add to that. As I said previously, a lot of the branches, how their boundaries are set up, the divisional branches, society branches are no longer relevant. And so we need to have a look at the new needs of our members to make sure they make sense, that we have local services for local members, and also there's local influencing as well. And so what we're saying is that we will be localising the support for our local members. We have done a lot of benchmarking, and we looked at various organisations to see how they split the country. And this is one of our proposals for the society. And what we're looking at is redrawing the branches. And in England, increasing the number of branches in answer to geography. We've looked at different, as I said, we've looked at different organisations. For example, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, they have 11 regions. The midwives, they have 70 branches. So there's a lot of difference, and it does depend on relation to the distribution and size of the membership in terms of organisation. So with the boundaries we're suggesting would provide 14 English branches, and with that there would be support as well, additional support. We also need to consider the local branches in the devolved nations as well, and that's something we're actively looking at. For example, there would more than likely be 2 branches in Wales, North and South Wales, because the geography between there is difficult, very difficult. The outcome of this is that we want to provide local services to local members. Now, previously there has been there's a lot of variety in what happens within the different branches. and also activity as well, and how that service delivery happens. For example, some society branches will be more active than the divisional branches, which might be more active than the faculty branches, but it could be the other way around as well. And what we want to do is to be able to open up those fantastic services which all of those committees and active members provide, so that they are widely available for all different members. We would also want to have more coherent national structures for that externally facing policy work as well, but able to draw upon that local expertise within the nations as well. And yes, it will mean that there will be a reduction of the number of regional networks by merging those 58 branches, which are faculty and divisional branches, and the 11 society branches into this new structure.
Divisions, sections and special groups. What we have at the moment are 3 different types of networks that are concerned with either the knowledge and training of the members, professional background of members, or the context in which the members work. So under the existing definitions within the statutes, a division is a group whose members have a professional training in common. A special group is a group where members have a professional context in common, and a section is a group where people have a shared research interest or a particular area of scientific interest from the discipline. In practice, those differences have become quite blurred over the years. So we have some sections, for example, crisis, disaster and trauma, which has a lot of practitioner members that really have a working context in common, and are much more like a special group. But they're a section in our current terminology. We have the special group in coaching psychology, which is actually in every respect operating in the same way as the divisions operate, except that there isn't a professional training route or a single professional training route for coaching psychology. We have a division of teachers, researchers and academics, who in many ways should really be a special group by the current definition. Part of the difficulty with that is we've got parity of esteem issues between the different groups that don't really serve anybody's interests. And also when we looked actually functionally at what all of those networks were doing, we did some analysis of their current activities, over a number of years. We checked that by the lead from the group that was looking at that, went out and spoke to a number of network chairs to kind of sense check what we thought people were doing. Actually, what we found is that functionally there is no difference between these groups. In terms of what they're delivering to their members, what they're engaged in, it's the same thing. Where we find the difference is in the scope and size. So our big networks, which tend to be our divisions, are doing more, but they're doing the same kinds of things as our sections and special groups do. So what are the things that those groups are doing? Well, they run conferences, symposia, scientific meetings for their members. They support excellence through professional development and networking, events and online resources, publications, and they have schemes for awarding grants, bursaries, and recognising excellence through awards. All of our networks at the moment, all of those sections, special groups and divisions are doing some combination of those things. And that's the stuff that we know our members value. One of the challenges for me throughout this review as Director of Membership Services is how we can actually make everything work better without losing any of that benefit to members. So we wanted to kind of analyse what those benefits were and protect those. So we're using a working title of knowledge and context groups to differentiate between these kinds of groups and the geographic groups that we were talking about. But actually, in terms of nomenclature, we are going down a route of thinking BPS clinical psychology or BPS cognitive psychology. We've also got the faculties and interest groups, and we've done quite a lot of work. We've had a number of workshops with members of faculty committees to discuss what those groups do and get a sense of what's important. And really review the positions of those. So just to confirm what these groups are, the faculties are mostly faculties of the Division of Clinical Psychology, and they represent particular areas of practice. counselling, because if you are a faculty in the DCP, your membership criteria is such for most faculties that you have to be a full member of the DCP to be a full member of the faculty. Counselling psychologists felt excluded from that. They could be associate members, but they couldn't fully participate. So they've also established a number of what they call network and interest groups, but functionally they're the same thing as the faculties. And actually we've also noticed there was no functional difference between the faculties and interest groups and the special groups of the society. It's just about where they sat in the hierarchy. We have a problem. Much of the expertise sits in those faculties and interest groups. If we really want the professional practice board to approve a document about what good looks like in child and adolescent services, we don't necessarily have anybody on that board who's ever worked in child and adolescent services. What we have with the faculties sitting in divisions is we are separating the expertise of our members who really know and understand those contexts 2 steps away from any of the decision-making bits of the organisation. And that's a problem. That's a problem for the whole organisation. It also is creating frustration in those faculties because they don't feel that they're listened to. They don't feel heard, and they don't feel that the effort that they're putting in is actually paying the dividend that it should pay. So we want faculties and interest groups to have a more effective voice in the society as well as a more effective voice for the society. We want that expertise to be front and centre. We want much closer links between the faculties and the strategy boards and the Senate, the bits of the organisation that we envisage really driving forward the strategy and the policy priorities. We also want to be able to encourage that collaboration across fields. One of the most exciting things anybody's come to me about recently is say, I want to run a cross-network group looking at the problem that we have with the suicide rates for children and young people in detention. And actually, it was quite hard work to sit down with that person, identify all the different groups across the society that genuinely should be involved in that piece of work. But there are several, and they're all tucked away inside other little groups. So fostering that greater collaboration and being operationally more effective, really valuing that input from our members. So it's not an easy problem to solve, and we know that people feel very strongly identified with these groups and with the group that they're closest to in terms of their practice, but also their professional background. However, we are recommending that those subgroups, those faculties and network groups, should actually be elevated to the same status as the other main networks, the division, special group sections. We want to give them a voice on the boards and on Senate by that elevation. We want to transition to have one layer of member networks equally valued as opposed to having all of these sub-layers nestled under other groups. So, how do we think we can achieve that? Well, this is not going to be easy, and it will be our first effort in getting all of these networks to really collaborate together. Because we do think that it makes sense to merge oncology and palliative care with cancer and palliative care. We do think that it makes sense to working with young people in counselling division with children, young people and their families in clinical psychology. And some of those are really obvious links to make. There are some others that might be a bit less obvious. For us, it might seem like it makes perfect sense to merge qualitative methods with quantitative methods. We know if we speak to the people in each of those sections that it makes no sense to them at all. And actually, having had a lot of those discussions, I'm now beginning to understand why it doesn't make sense. But these are the discussions that we need to have and facilitate members having. Because we're not going to stand here top down and tell you, you have to join with that group. What we're going to do is ask you to talk to each other to decide which relationships make sense. Now, one of the things that AJ pointed out with her slides is we do have some ridiculously small groups. Actually, the group that's got 11 members, I think, is a geographic subgroup of a special interest network. But we also have some really valuable groups that are serving perhaps minority interests. So, for example, HIV and sexual health. is a really important faculty within the DCP. It's only got about 75 members. That's not because it's not important, that's because there's a relatively small number of psychologists working in that area, and there will only be a relatively small number of psychologists working in that area, but we still need to be able to support them. However, it's very difficult for the organisation to effectively support a network that's small. So we'll be helping them to find a home, perhaps in clinical health, for example, where they can be supported as a work stream and still deliver those publications and conferences to members with that particular working context, but be part of a bigger group as well to deliver some of the broader benefits to their members of being part of a slightly bigger group. And we also need to think about if we need new groups to fill gaps in provision. So we've got lots of faculties, but we haven't got an adult mental health group anywhere. And there's maybe lots of historical reasons why we don't, but we think we're probably poorer for that mission. And as psychology develops as a profession and as a discipline, we will know that there are new areas that develop that we need to be able to support.